There will be more 0 days. Oh, and hey, Pone, if things get a little too hard for you, I hear that there's a new segment that might need jailbreaking soon. Just amazing that jailbreaking is still happening in this day and age. iOS 13.5.5 Beta 1 followed shortly after, and this includes some hints at a new audio section coming to News Plus. MacRumors was able to discover some features and glyphs in iOS 13.5.5 that directly relate to audio support for Apple News Plus and depict the new AirPods Studio once again. Those are coming very soon. An exclusive from Max Weinbach, he's saying that the firmware has been finalized. They're ready to be flashed onto the production units, so that launch is happening imminently, likely at WWDC. Oh, and this is the last day for the 4 iPhone 11 Pro giveaway. Also regarding Phone Rebel cases, so we started shipping frosted. If you haven't gotten your tracking, you will this week or early next week, depending on your positioning in the order numbers. Crystal and Rebel will follow, start rolling out on June 8th. And for everyone that does have tracking, it takes 3 to 4 days for it to cross the border and then show up in the system. Also been working on some amazing gadgets. The strength that lock mount gives you, for accessories, it's amazing. I cannot wait for the ecosystem we build here. And back to the leaks. So DigiTimes is reporting that Apple is working on an ambient light sensor that they want to include in a future version of AirPods. This would possibly enable heart rate monitoring or a blood oxygen saturation sensor in future versions of AirPods. It's something that we've known Apple has been working on for quite some time with patents, and we may finally see AirPods gain some health capabilities. And with WWDC just 3 weeks away, the verifier is reporting that all iPhones currently supported on iOS 13 will also support iOS 14. Amazing news, because the iPhone 6s and SE are still very capable devices. Happy to see them being supported for yet another year. And there's some info I'll be sharing from this new Twitter leaker, starting with this. He's saying that in either iPadOS 14 or 15, Apple will be adding multi-user support to iPadOS, saying that with this feature, iPadOS is moving ever closer to macOS. Okay, and the iPhone 13. So let's talk about the iPhone that comes after the iPhone that's not even released yet. I mean, nothing unusual here as Apple is working on iPhones years in advance. So Twitter leaker Fudge shared this concept image with us, telling us to take it with a grain of salt, but it's apparently what the new camera layout could look like on the upcoming iPhone 13 or 12s. John Prosser immediately shuts this down, saying this is completely untrue, saying that Apple would likely be keeping the same layout from the iPhone 12 on the iPhone 13. Prosser himself goes on to tease that he will be sharing some iPhone 13 details fairly soon. Not even surprised at this point. I mean, why not iPhone 14 details? This guy has completely spoiled the Apple Glass announcement. What next? Now that new Twitter leaker is telling us that Apple is looking to take the iPhone 13 in a new design direction with an all-new camera design. So there could be some merit to that leak. And Fudge goes on to detail the D6X, the iPhone 13 camera, the specs themselves, and it seems that not the iPhone 12, but the iPhone that comes after will be the huge leap in megapixels and all the other details that we've been hearing about. So the iPhone 12 will stay relatively unchanged. And Fudge goes on to detail the actual megapixel count and more details regarding the camera on the iPhone 13. He says that the wide-angle lens will now be 64 megapixels with 1x optical zoom and 6x digital. The telephoto lens will be 40 megapixels with 3 to 5 optical zoom and then 15 to 20 times digital zoom. And apparently the new lens, aside from the LiDAR sensor, will be a 64 megapixel anamorphic video-centric lens with a 2:1:1 ratio. And the ultra-wide lens would be a 40 megapixel shooter with reverse optical zoom, 0.25x, for an even bigger capture area from the same spot compared to the 11 Pro. And a LiDAR 4.0 sensor, no details given, but of course would be more capable than the outgoing model on the iPhone 12. And that Twitter leaker goes on to say that Apple will be adding mini LED technology to the iPhone 13 Pro and the Apple Watch Series 7 in 2021, along with the iPad Pro and MacBook Pro. So finally, mini LED is happening, just not this year. He also goes on to say that the iPhone 13 Pro will be all screen. So no notch, not happening in 2020, happening in 2021 on the Pro models, supposedly. He goes on to say that Apple will be adding reverse wireless charging to the iPhone 13 in 2021. And you'll be able to charge iPhones, AirPods, or another iPhone on the back of the iPhone 13, and that Apple will be adding this feature to the palm rest on MacBook Pros. Also another reminder by Fudge that we will never see USB-C on an iPhone. Apple will be going straight away to the smart connector in 2021. We got a quick glimpse of that in the earlier iPhone 12 prototypes, not happening this year, but happening next year. And this new leaker does confirm this, saying MagSafe will be available either on the side or the bottom of the iPhone 13 in 2021. Apple is skipping USB-C altogether and going straight to a portless future. And lastly, this leaker says that Apple might be ditching the iPhone number naming altogether, and the iPhone could just be iPhone Pro, starting with the iPhone 13. Okay, and moving on to iPhone 12 stuff, Mac Takara has once again shared CADs, 3D printed CADs of the iPhone 12 lineup. There's really nothing new here, not sure why they're sharing it again, but they do confirm that the SIM card tray has been relocated to the left side. This new Twitter leaker shares that the iPhone 12 base model will also come with an 18-watt fast charger. Currently, only the 11 Pros have this in box. And an iPhone 12 logic board has leaked, more akin to that of the iPhone 11 than of the 11 Pro. It's more of an L shape now, and I had expert Federico Serva, who's an iPhone repair specialist, look into it, and he says that this is an actual board being used on a real iPhone. That's what the 820 number signifies. And the SIM card tray will be all the way on the bottom, which is what leads me to believe it's from an iPhone 12, not a 12 Pro, as it does line up with the current outgoing CADs. Now, display analyst Ross Young has given us exact specs for the displays on the iPhone 12 lineup. A couple interesting tidbits here. First off, the pixels per inch display density will be mostly the same on this year's iPhones, between 458 and 475, depending on the model. And we may see vastly improved display brightness on the iPhone 12 Pro, the Pro XDR display, between 1,000 to 1,600 nits using the latest Samsung technology. Now, this hasn't been calibrated properly on the Samsung end. They don't have the capability to do 1,600, but it will definitely be more than the 800 nits on the 11 Pro. And Ross Young does believe there will be a 6-week delay in production, so likely an October launch. And Ross Young also gathers that a 120 Hz display will be more likely released in 2021 when the LTPO technology is actually available on the iPhone. Again, it's still possible that it could happen on this year's iPhones as rumored. It'll switch between 60 to 120 Hz. It won't necessarily be fully variable where it goes from 1 to 120 like it would with an LTPO display. And Ming-Chi Kuo reports that this year's iPhones may be the first without wired earpods in the box. This will do two things for Apple. One, save on production costs, keeping the prices as low as we heard that they would be, and be more of an enticement for you to purchase AirPods in the future. There's also a new NFC specification, which Apple could use on this year's iPhone to enable reverse wireless charging. It only enables a 1-watt capability of this tech, but it's something at least. In any case, it will happen on the iPhone 13. And this year's iPhones may be the first to support the new Wi-Fi 6E standard. The E stands for extended, so it helps with a very congested network to keep data throughput running smoothly. And some research from the US Army has resulted in a new 5G switch, which is 50 times more efficient at switching versus current 5G switches. This would enable an insane difference in battery life on future iPhones or wherever this tech eventually ends up. I mean, it's optimistic to think it'll come to an iPhone, but it's great that this tech is out there. And John Prosser has reported that we're more likely to see an October event based on the way things are going, and then a launch later on in November for the iPhone 12s. And Digitimes is reporting that Apple is prioritizing production for the 6.1-inch iPhones first, as those likely will be the best sellers, with the Pro models following after. And Cohen Investment Bank is reporting that the iPhone 12 is more likely to launch in November based on the way things are going, and Apple is reportedly ordering 13% less iPhones based on the demand that they see. And Fudge is reporting that it's possible we'll be seeing an ARM MacBook sooner than we expected, with the new Twitter leaker chiming in saying it could happen this fall. And Twitter leaker Love to Dream is reporting that the micro LED Apple Watch Series 6, which we heard so much about, not happening likely, probably slated for 2021. So the same display on this year's Apple Watch. Jeff Poo is reporting that we'll be seeing a mini LED iPad Pro, iMac Pro, MacBook Pro rolling out in 2021. And 9to5Mac is exclusively reporting that Apple will be rebuilding the Messages application on macOS completely for 10.16. Thank goodness, as it's a complete mess right now. The search system is broken. It's just a terrible experience. And something curious,